The Awakening. The vastness of space stretched out before Dr. Lyra Chen as she peered through the viewport of the research vessel Curiosity. Stars twinkled in the distance, their light traveling across unfathomable distances to reach her eyes. But it wasn't the stars that held her attention. It was the massive, derelict ship floating silently in the void, its hull scarred by millennia of cosmic debris impacts. "Professor Takashi, you need to see this," Lyra called out, her voice barely above a whisper. The older man floated over to her, his weathered face creasing with curiosity. "What have you found, Dr. Chen?" Lyra pointed to the holographic display flickering to life beside them. "The ship's design. It's not like anything we've seen before. But look at these markings." She zoomed in on a section of the hull, revealing faded lettering. "It's in English." Professor Takashi's eyes widened. "Impossible. English died out with Earth, thousands of years ago." "Exactly," Lyra said, her excitement building. "This ship, it's human in origin, and based on the level of technological sophistication, it must be from before the cataclysm." The cataclysm. The event that had shattered human civilization and scattered the remnants of their species across the stars. For centuries, the survivors had struggled to rebuild, isolated and alone. Now, most of humanity existed in small pockets, eking out a living on the fringes of alien societies. But this was different. This ship was a relic from when humanity stood tall among the stars. "We need to board it," Lyra declared, already reaching for her EVA suit. Professor Takashi hesitated. "Lyra, we should wait for backup. This discovery is too important to risk." "With all due respect, Professor," Lyra interrupted, "we don't know how long this ship has been drifting. It could disappear into the void at any moment. We need to act now." After a moment of contemplation, the professor nodded. "Very well, but we proceed with caution." An hour later, Lyra and Professor Takashi, along with a small team of researchers and security personnel, stood in the airlock of the ancient human vessel. The ship's emergency systems had miraculously maintained a breathable atmosphere, though the air tasted stale and metallic. As they made their way through the corridors, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking through a tomb. The ship was eerily silent, save for the occasional creak of metal adjusting to their presence. "Look at this technology," one of the researchers marveled, running a hand along a console. "It's centuries ahead of anything we have now. How did we lose so much?" Lyra didn't answer. Her attention was focused on a sealed door at the end of the corridor. Unlike the others they had encountered, this one seemed to be powered, a faint blue light pulsing around its edges. "Professor," she called out, "I think I've found something." As the team gathered around, Lyra examined the control panel beside the door. To her surprise, it sprang to life at her touch, holographic symbols flickering into existence. "It's asking for authentication," she muttered, her mind racing. Then, on a hunch, she placed her hand flat against the panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a beam of light scanned her palm, and the door hissed open. "How did you do that?" Professor Takashi asked, astonished. Lyra shook her head, just as surprised. I don't know. It's like it recognized me somehow." As they stepped into the room beyond, lights flickered on, revealing rows upon rows of cylindrical pods. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as she realized what they were. "Cryostasis chambers," she whispered. The team spread out, examining the pods. Most were dark, their occupants long since turned to dust. But as Lyra approached the center of the room, she saw one pod glowing with a soft, pulsing light. "There's someone alive in here," she called out, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. As the team gathered around, the pod systems began to whir to life. Frost melted away from the transparent cover, revealing the face of a young woman, her features strikingly similar to Lyra's own. With a hiss of escaping gas, the pod opened, and the woman's eyes fluttered open. She gasped, sitting up abruptly and looking around in confusion. Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. Lyra stepped forward, her heart pounding. "You're safe," she said softly. "My name is Dr. Lyra Chen. Can you tell us who you are?" The woman's eyes locked onto Lyra, widening in recognition. "Chen, your family," she whispered. Then, with growing urgency, she grabbed Lyra's arm. How long have I been asleep?" Lyra hesitated, unsure how to break the news. We're not certain, but based on our estimates, this ship has been adrift for approximately 40,000 years. The color drained from the woman's face. "No," she whispered. "No, it can't be. Earth, what happened to Earth?" The room fell silent, the weight of history pressing down on them all. Finally, Professor Takashi spoke, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Earth was destroyed," he said softly. "The details have been lost to time, but we know it was annihilated in an event we call the Cataclysm. Humanity, what's left of us, we're scattered across the stars now." The woman closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. When she opened them again, there was a fire burning in their depths. "My name is Dr. Arya Chen," she said, her voice gaining strength, "and I am the last survivor of Project Phoenix. We were sent out as a failsafe, a way to preserve humanity's knowledge and heritage in case the worst happened." She looked around at the team, her gaze fierce and determined. "And now, it seems, we have a mission to complete." As Arya spoke, alarms began to blare throughout the ship. Holographic displays sprang to life, showing a massive vessel approaching rapidly. "What is that?" Lyra asked, fear creeping into her voice. Arya's expression hardened. "That," she said grimly, "is the reason Earth was destroyed. And if we don't act fast, history is about to repeat itself." She turned to the team, her eyes blazing with purpose. "Listen carefully," she said. "I have a message for every human left in the galaxy, and for the ones who did this to us. Tell them humanity has returned. And this time, we're not running." As the alien ship loomed ever closer, Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew one thing for certain. The universe was about to change, and humanity would be at the center of it all. The awakening had begun, and with it, the dawn of a new era for the human race. The Alliance. The bridge of the Curiosity was a flurry of activity as Lyra, Professor Takashi, and the newly awakened Arya Chen worked feverishly to bring the ancient human ship systems online. Outside, the alien vessel loomed ever closer, its sleek, obsidian hull seeming to absorb the very light of the stars around it. "We're not going to be able to outrun them," Lyra said, her fingers flying over the holographic controls. "This ship hasn't moved in millennia. Even if we could get the engines online, they'd catch us before we could make it to the nearest jump point." Arya nodded grimly. "We don't need to outrun them. We just need to buy enough time to transmit a warning to the rest of humanity." Professor Takashi looked up from his console, his brow furrowed. "But how? We don't have the coordinates for any human settlements, and even if we did, our communications array isn't powerful enough to reach them." A small smile played at the corners of Arya's lips. "That's where you're wrong, Professor. This ship was designed for exactly this scenario. We have a quantum entanglement communicator that can reach every human colony simultaneously, regardless of distance." Lyra's eyes widened. "That's impossible. Quantum entanglement communication is purely theoretical." "It was theoretical 40,000 years ago," Arya corrected. "But we made it work. The only problem is, it takes an enormous amount of energy to activate. We'll only get one shot at this." As if on cue, the ship shuddered violently. Warning klaxons blared as the alien vessel fired its first salvo. "They're trying to disable us, not destroy us," Arya said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "They want what's in our databanks." Lyra gritted her teeth, fighting to keep her balance as the ship rocked again. "Then let's not give them the chance. What do you need us to do?" Arya's eyes met Lyra's. and for a moment, the family resemblance between them was striking. I need you to buy us time. Use whatever weapons this ship has left. And Lyra, I need you to be ready to receive the transmission. You're going to be the messenger. Before Lyra could respond, a new alarm sounded. Professor Takashi's face paled as he read the display. They're preparing to board us. Arya nodded, her expression grim. Then we do this now. Professor, I need you to reroute all power to the quantum communicator. Lyra, get ready. The fate of our species rests on this moment. As Arya and Professor Takashi worked to activate the ancient communication device, Lyra manned the weapon systems. The Curiosity might have been old, but its defenses were far beyond anything the current human settlements possessed. Beams of coherent light lashed out, scoring deep gashes in the alien vessel's hull. But it wasn't enough. Even as Lyra fought to keep the invaders at bay, she could hear the sound of cutting torches on the hull. They were breaking through. It's ready. Arya called out. She stood before a pulsing orb of energy, her hands hovering over its surface. Lyra, come here. Quickly. Lyra abandoned her post, rushing to Arya's side. The older woman grasped Lyra's hands, placing them on the orb. The moment they made contact, Lyra's world exploded into light and sound. Images, voices, and emotions flooded her mind. She saw Earth as it once was, a jewel of blue and green. She witnessed its destruction, felt the anguish of billions of souls crying out in terror, and she understood, in that moment, the truth of what had happened. The Celestial Concordat, a coalition of elder races who saw themselves as the guardians of the galaxy, had deemed humanity too dangerous to be allowed to expand beyond their home system. Earth's destruction had been a calculated move, meant to end the human threat before it could begin. But they had underestimated humanity's resilience. Even as Earth burned, seeds of hope had been scattered across the stars. And now, those seeds were about to bear fruit. As the alien boarders burst onto the bridge, Lyra's eyes snapped open. She looked at Arya, understanding dawning in her gaze. I know what I have to do, she said. Arya nodded, a sad smile on her face. Then go. We'll hold them off as long as we can. Lyra hesitated for a moment, then pulled Arya into a fierce embrace. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. With one last look at her newfound family, Lyra raced towards the escape pods. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of battle as Arya and Professor Takashi fought to buy her time. As her pod rocketed away from the ancient ship, Lyra saw a brilliant flash of light. The quantum communicator had activated, sending its message to every human settlement across the galaxy, and with it, the knowledge that had been entrusted to her. For days, Lyra drifted through space, her small pod evading detection thanks to technology far beyond her understanding. When she was finally picked up by a passing freighter, the galaxy was already abuzz with the news. Humanity, long thought to be a dying species clinging to the edges of alien civilizations, was awakening. The message had been received, and with it, a call to arms. On countless worlds, humans who had lived their lives as second-class citizens suddenly found themselves united by a common purpose. The knowledge Arya had passed on through Lyra spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of defiance that had long lain dormant. But it wasn't just humans who were affected by the message. Other species, those who had suffered under the Celestial Concordat's rigid control, saw an opportunity. Ancient alliances were remembered, and new ones forged in the face of a common enemy. Lyra found herself at the center of it all, a reluctant leader thrust into a role she had never imagined. As representatives from a dozen species gathered on a neutral world to discuss their next move, she stood before them, her voice strong despite her inner doubts. We stand at a crossroads, she began, her words echoing through the vast chamber. For too long, the Celestial Concordat has decided the fate of entire civilizations. They destroyed my people's homeworld, scattered us across the stars, all because they feared what we might become. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. But they made a mistake. They thought they could break us, that we would fade away into obscurity. Instead, we endured. We adapted. And now we're ready to take our place in the galaxy once more. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Lyra continued, her voice gaining strength. But we can't do it alone. The Concordat is powerful, with resources beyond our current capabilities. That's why I'm here today, asking for your help. Not just for humanity's sake, but for all species who have suffered under their rule. She held out her hands, palms up in a gesture of openness. I propose an alliance, not one based on fear or subjugation, but on mutual respect and a shared desire for freedom. Together, we can challenge the Concordat's dominion. Together, we can forge a new future for all our peoples. For a moment, silence reigned in the chamber. Then, slowly at first, but with growing enthusiasm, the delegates began to applaud. Species that had been at odds for centuries found common ground in Lyra's words. As the applause died down, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin stepped forward. Lyra recognized her as Ambassador Zera of the Luminae, a species known for their mastery of light-based technologies. Dr. Chen, Zera said, her voice melodic and soothing, the Luminae have long chafed under the Concordat's restrictions. We would be honored to stand with humanity in this fight. One by one, other delegates came forward, pledging their support. The Krell, a race of silicon-based life forms, offered their unparalleled skills in engineering. The Voidwalkers, mysterious beings who navigated the darkness between stars, promised to provide safe passage for the Alliance's ships. As the meeting progressed, strategies were formed, resources pooled, and a name chosen for their new coalition, the Galactic Resistance. Later, as Lyra stood alone on a balcony overlooking the alien city, she felt a presence behind her. Turning, she saw Ambassador Zora approaching. "You've done something remarkable today, Dr. Chen," the Luminae said softly. "You've given hope to those who had none." Lyra sighed, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. "I just hope it's enough. The Concordat won't give up their power easily." Zera placed a comforting hand on Lyra's arm, her touch cool and soothing. "No, they won't. But neither will we. Your people have a saying, I believe. United we stand, divided we fall. Today, we stand united." As Lyra looked out over the alien landscape, she felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But for the first time in millennia, humanity wasn't facing it alone. The alliance had been forged. Now, it was time to resist. The resistance, the hum of advanced machinery filled the air as Lyra walked through the cavernous workshop. All around her, humans and aliens worked side by side, their efforts focused on a singular goal: survival. This hidden base, nestled deep within an asteroid field, had become the heart of the Galactic Resistance. 6 months had passed since the formation of their alliance, and in that time, they had made remarkable progress. But the shadow of the celestial Concordat loomed ever larger, and Lyra knew that their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. "Dr. Chen," a gravelly voice called out. Lyra turned to see Grok, a Krell engineer, approaching. The silicon-based lifeform's crystalline body glittered under the harsh workshop lights. "We've made a breakthrough with the hybrid drive system." Lyra's eyes lit up with excitement. "Show me," she said, following Grok to a nearby workstation. The hybrid drive was a fusion of human ingenuity and alien technology, combining the quantum entanglement principles from Aria's ship with the Luminae's mastery of light-based propulsion. If successful, it would allow their ships to travel vast distances almost instantaneously, giving them a crucial advantage over the Concordat's forces. As Grok explained the intricacies of the system, Lyra marveled at how far they had come. Humanity, once on the brink of extinction, was now at the forefront of a technological revolution. The knowledge preserved by Aria and her team had proven invaluable, providing insights that had been lost for millennia. But it wasn't just human knowledge that was driving their advancements. The Alliance had brought together diverse species, each contributing their unique perspectives and abilities. The result was a level of innovation that none of them could have achieved alone. Dr. Chen. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. Lyra turned to see Zara, the Lumine ambassador, approaching. The council is assembling. We've received word from our operatives within Concordat space. Lyra nodded, her expression turning serious. Thank you, Zara. I'll be there shortly. As she made her way to the council chambers, Lyra couldn't help but reflect on the strange turns her life had taken. From a xenorchaeologist studying the past to a leader shaping the future of the galaxy, the weight of responsibility sometimes felt overwhelming. But she drew strength from the trust placed in her by both her human kin and their alien allies. The council chamber was a stark contrast to the industrial feel of the rest of the base. Holographic displays flickered around a circular table where representatives from each member species of the Resistance sat. As Lyra took her place, she noted the tension in the room. "What news from our operatives?" she asked, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. A holographic image sprang to life in the center of the table, showing a massive space station orbiting a red giant star. "This is Concordat Station Alpha," explained Nyx, a voidwalker whose shadowy form seemed to shift and waver. "It's the linchpin of their defense network in this sector. Our operatives have confirmed that it's also the source of the suppression field that's been hampering our long-range communications." Lyra leaned forward, studying the image intently. "What are its defenses like?" "Formidable," Nyx replied. "Multiple layers of energy shields, automated defense platforms, and a fleet of patrol ships. A frontal assault would be suicide." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Without the ability to coordinate their forces across vast distances, the Resistance would be picked apart piecemeal by the Concordat's superior numbers. It was Grok who broke the silence. Perhaps we don't need to destroy it," the Krell said thoughtfully. "If we could infiltrate the station and repurpose its systems, we could turn their own technology against them." Zara's bioluminescent skin pulsed with excitement. "Yes, and with the hybrid drive, we could position a small team close enough to avoid detection." As the council debated the merits of the plan, Lyra felt a familiar fire igniting within her. This was what humanity excelled at, finding unconventional solutions to impossible problems. "We'll need a small team," she said, her voice cutting through the discussion. "Volunteers willing to undertake an extremely high-risk mission." The room fell silent once more, all eyes turning to Lyra. She met their gazes steadily, knowing what she had to do. "I'll lead the team myself." Protests immediately erupted around the table. "Dr. Chen, you're too valuable to risk," one of the human representatives argued. "The Resistance needs your leadership." Lyra shook her head. "The Resistance needs hope," she countered. "And what better way to provide that than by showing we're willing to fight on the front lines ourselves?" She looked around the room, her expression resolute. "I'm not asking anyone to take risks I'm not willing to take myself." One by one, the council members nodded their agreement. As the meeting adjourned and preparations for the mission began, Lyra felt a mix of anticipation and fear. The coming days would determine the fate of not just humanity, but all the species who had thrown in their lot with the Resistance. The next week was a blur of activity. A team was assembled, a mix of humans and aliens, each chosen for their unique skills. Zara would accompany them, her ability to manipulate light crucial for evading detection. Grok's expertise in technology would be essential for infiltrating the station systems. Nyx, with their ability to navigate the void between stars, would pilot their ship. As the day of the mission dawned, Lyra stood before her team in the hangar bay. The experimental ship that would carry them, dubbed the Shadowdancer, gleamed under the lights, its sleek form a testament to the combined ingenuity of their alliance. "I won't lie to you," Lyra began, her voice carrying across the bay. "This mission is dangerous. We'll be deep in enemy territory, with no hope of rescue if things go wrong. But what we do today could change the course of this war, not just for humanity, but for every species that suffered under the Concordat's rule. She looked at each member of her team, seeing the determination in their eyes. We come from different worlds, different cultures, but we're united by a common goal: freedom, the right to determine our own destinies. Today, we take the first step towards making that dream a reality. As they boarded the Shadowdancer, Lyra felt a sense of calm settle over her. Whatever happened, she knew they were making a stand. Humanity had been knocked down, scattered across the stars, but they hadn't been broken. And now, with allies at their side, they were ready to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The ship's engines hummed to life, the hybrid drive spinning up with a sound like distant thunder. As the hangar bay doors opened to reveal the star-studded void beyond, Lyra took her place at the command station. "All systems go," Nyx reported, their shadowy form melding with the ship's controls. Lyra nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Then let's remind the Concordat why they feared us in the first place. Shadowdancer, launch." In a flash of light that defied conventional physics, the ship vanished, leaving behind only a ripple in the fabric of spacetime. The mission to infiltrate Concordat Station Alpha had begun, and with it, the true test of the Resistance's strength. As they hurtled through the quantum foam towards their destination, Lyra's mind raced with possibilities. Success would mean a turning point in their struggle against the Concordat. Failure didn't bear thinking about. But as she looked around at her team, human and alien alike, united in purpose, Lyra felt a surge of hope. They had come this far against impossible odds. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The Resistance was more than just a military force. It was a testament to the indomitable spirit of life itself, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that had known only oppression for far too long. And at its heart was humanity, battered but unbroken, ready to reclaim their place among the stars. As the Shadowdancer emerged from its quantum leap on the outskirts of the Concordat Station's sensor range, Lyra steeled herself for the challenges ahead. The real test was about to begin. The reckoning. The Shadowdancer hung motionless in the void, its advanced stealth systems rendering it invisible to the myriad of sensors that protected Concordat Station Alpha. From the ship's bridge, Lyra watched the massive structure slowly rotate, its gleaming surface reflecting the light of the nearby red giant star. "It's even more impressive up close," Zora murmured, her bioluminescent skin dimmed to avoid detection. Lyra nodded, her expression grim, and just as deadly. "Nyx, what's our status?" The Voidwalker's shadowy form coalesced next to her. "We're holding position just outside their sensor range. The station's defense grid is even more extensive than our intelligence suggested. I've identified a potential blind spot, but it will require extremely precise navigation to exploit." "Then that's what we'll do," Lyra said firmly. She turned to Grok, who was interfacing directly with the ship's systems. "Are you ready?" The Krell's crystalline body pulsed with energy. "Affirmative. I've analyzed their communication protocols. Once we're inside, I should be able to bypass their security systems." Lyra took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "All right, team. This is it. Remember, our primary objective is to disable the suppression field and transmit the station's defense codes to the Resistance fleet. If we can do that, we give our people a fighting chance." As the team made their final preparations, Lyra couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them to this moment. In the months since the formation of the Resistance, they had faced countless challenges and setbacks, but with each obstacle overcome, their resolve had only grown stronger. "Dr. Chen," Zora said softly, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "Whatever happens in there, I want you to know it's been an honor serving with you. You've shown us that humanity is capable of far more than the Concordat ever gave you credit for." Lyra smiled, touched by the Luminae's words. "The honor has been mine, Zora. All of you have taught me that the strength of our alliance lies not in our individual abilities, but in our willingness to stand together. With a nod to Nyx, Lyra gave the order to begin their approach. The shadowed Dancer glided silently through space, its movements so precise it seemed to dance between the station's sensor beams. As they neared their entry point, a maintenance airlock on the station's underside, tension mounted on the bridge. "We're going to have a very small window," Nyx warned, their form flickering with concentration. "Once we dock, we'll have approximately 30 seconds before their systems detect the breach." Lyra nodded, her hand hovering over the airlock controls. "Understood. On my mark. Now." The next few moments were a blur of activity. The Shadow Dancer connected with the station with a soft thud, and the team rushed through the airlock. Just as the station's alarms began to blare, Grok interfaced with the internal systems, temporarily disabling the local security measures. "We're in," Lyra announced, her voice low. "Remember, we move fast and stay together." "Grok, lead the way to the central control hub." As they made their way through the labyrinthine corridors of the station, Lyra marveled at the scale of the structure. It was a testament to the Concordat's power and technological prowess, and a stark reminder of what they were up against. Their progress was not unopposed. Several times, they encountered Concordat security forces, forcing them to rely on Zara's light-bending abilities and Nyx's shadow manipulation to avoid detection. When conflict was unavoidable, Lyra was reminded of the diverse strengths of her team. Human ingenuity, Krell resilience, Lumine precision, and Voidwalker adaptability. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. As they neared the central hub, however, their luck ran out. A squad of Concordat elite guards, alerted to their presence, ambushed them in a wide corridor. Energy weapons flared, filling the air with deadly light. "Take cover," Lyra shouted, diving behind a bulkhead. She returned fire with her own weapon, a hybrid design that incorporated Lumine light-focusing technology with human ballistic principles. The battle was intense but brief. As the last Concordat guard fell, Lyra did a quick head count, relieved to see that her team had survived relatively unscathed. But their element of surprise was now completely gone. "We need to move, now," she urged, leading the charge towards the central hub. They burst into the vast chamber that housed the station's primary systems, only to find themselves face to face with a sight that made Lyra's blood run cold. Standing before the main control interface was a being unlike any she had ever encountered. It was tall, easily twice the height of a human, with a body that seemed to shimmer and shift, as if not entirely present in this dimension. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were swirling vortexes of energy that seemed to look through Lyra rather than at her. "So," the being said, its voice resonating not through the air, but directly in their minds, "the children of Earth have finally arrived. We've been expecting you." Lyra stepped forward, her weapon raised. "Who are you?" she demanded. The being's form rippled, a gesture that might have been amusement. "I am Nexus, the guiding intelligence of the celestial Concordat. And you, Lyra Chen, are a most interesting anomaly." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. How did this being know her name? "If you've been expecting us," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady, "then you know why we're here. The suppression field ends now." Nexus's form pulsed with energy. "You misunderstand, young one. We did not create the suppression field to contain you. We created it to protect you." Confusion rippled through the team. Grok stepped forward, his crystalline body vibrating with tension. "Protect us. You destroyed Earth. You scattered humanity across the stars." "A regrettable necessity," Nexus replied, its tone maddeningly calm. "But not for the reasons you believe. Tell me, Lyra Chen, what do you know of your species' true history?" Lyra's mind raced, trying to make sense of the being's words. "I know that humanity was on the brink of becoming a galactic power," she said. "I know that the Concordat feared our potential and sought to destroy us before we could challenge your dominion." Nexus's form shimmered, and suddenly the chamber was filled with holographic images. Lyra saw Earth as it once was, teeming with life and potential. But then she saw something else, a darkness spreading across the planet, a corruption that seemed to devour everything in its path. Humanity was not destroyed because of its potential for greatness, Nexus explained. It was quarantined because it had become a vessel for something far more dangerous, an entity we call the Void, a cosmic parasite that seeks to consume all life in the universe. The images shifted, showing scenes of chaos and destruction across the galaxy. Entire civilizations fell, consumed by the same darkness that had threatened Earth. Your ancestors discovered the Void, believing it to be a source of unlimited power, Nexus continued. They did not understand the price of that power until it was almost too late. The destruction of Earth was not an act of aggression, but a desperate attempt to contain the Void's spread. Lyra's mind reeled from the implications. But the survivors, the human colonies scattered across the galaxy, quarantined, Nexus replied, kept separate and technologically limited to prevent the Void from regaining its foothold. But now, with your resistance, you have unknowingly begun to weaken the barriers we put in place. The chamber fell silent as the team struggled to process this revelation. Lyra felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Everything she thought she knew suddenly cast into doubt. But as she looked at her team, human and alien alike, united in their quest for freedom, she realized that the truth, however shocking, didn't change their fundamental purpose. Even if what you're saying is true, Lyra said, her voice gaining strength, keeping us in the dark, treating us like children to be controlled, that's not the answer. If this Void is as dangerous as you claim, then we deserve to know the truth. We deserve the chance to fight it on our own terms. Nexus's form pulsed, and for a moment, Lyra thought she detected a hint of approval in its otherworldly gaze. Perhaps it said, "It is time for a new approach. You have proven yourselves more resilient, more adaptable than we anticipated. But the question remains, are you ready to face the true enemy?" As if in answer to Nexus's question, alarms began to blare throughout the station. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing a massive distortion in space approaching rapidly. "It would seem," Nexus said, its tone grave, "that the choice has been made for us. The Void has sensed your presence, Lyra Chen. It comes to reclaim what it lost so long ago." Lyra looked at her team, seeing the determination in their eyes despite the fear and uncertainty. Then she turned back to Nexus, her decision made. "We didn't come this far to run," she said firmly. "Whatever this Void is, we'll face it together. Not as your subjects, but as allies. It's time for the Celestial Concordat and the Galactic Resistance to stand as one." As the station shuddered under the approach of an enemy beyond their comprehension, Lyra knew that the true battle, the fight for the very soul of the galaxy, was only just beginning. The resurgence. The vast chamber of Concordat Station Alpha thrummed with energy as Lyra, her team, and Nexus prepared for the impending arrival of the Void. Holographic displays flickered with a frenzy of information, tracking the entity's approach. "We don't have much time," Nexus intoned, its form pulsing with urgency. "The Void's presence will destabilize the station's containment fields. If it breaches our defenses, the consequences will be catastrophic." Lyra's mind raced, processing the monumental shift in their situation. Minutes ago, they had been enemies. Now they faced an existential threat that demanded unity. "What are our options?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her insides. Nexus's form shimmered, projecting a complex schematic of the station. "The suppression field that you sought to disable is our primary defense against the Void, but it was never designed to repel a direct assault of this magnitude." Grok stepped forward, his crystalline body vibrating with intense calculations. "If we repurpose the quantum entanglement array from the shadow tensor, we could potentially amplify the field's strength." Zera's bioluminescent skin pulsed with excitement. "Yes, and if we combine it with Luminae light-focusing technology, we could create a barrier that the Void can't penetrate." Lyra nodded, a plan forming in her mind. "Nexus, can you give us control of the station's systems?" The beam's swirling vortex eyes fixed on Lyra, seeming to peer into her very soul. "You ask for a great deal of trust, Lyra Chen." "Trust works both ways," Lyra countered. "You've kept secrets from us for millennia. It's time to let humanity stand on its own feet. We're stronger than you think." For a moment, the chamber was silent save for the blaring alarms. Then, with a pulse of energy, Nexus interfaced with the station's core. "Very well. The fate of the galaxy now rests in your hands." As control of the station transferred to Lyra and her team, they sprang into action. Grok merged with the central computer, his silicon-based biology allowing him to process information at unprecedented speeds. Zara began reconfiguring the station's energy distribution, channeling power to where it would be needed most. Nyx's shadowy form flitted between consoles, their natural affinity for the void providing crucial insights into their enemy's nature. "The void is not just a physical entity," they reported. "It's a conceptual one as well. It feeds on fear, despair, the darkness within sentient minds." Lyra's eyes widened as the implications sank in. "Then we need to do more than just strengthen our defenses. We need to give people hope." She turned to Nexus, her expression resolute. "Open a channel to every resistance and Concordat ship in range. It's time to tell them the truth." As Lyra prepared to address the combined forces of the galaxy, the station shuddered violently. Through the vast viewports, she could see space itself seeming to tear apart, revealing a darkness deeper than the void between stars. Taking a deep breath, Lyra activated the communication array. Her voice, carried by technologies beyond her comprehension, reached out across the stars. "To all ships of the Resistance and the Celestial Concordat, this is Dr. Lyra Chen. What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to believe, but I ask that you listen carefully. The enemy we face today is not each other, but a threat to all life in the galaxy." As Lyra explained the true nature of the void and the history that had led to this moment, she could see the reactions on the faces of countless beings across hundreds of ships. Shock, disbelief, anger, but also, gradually, understanding and determination. "I know many of you have suffered under the Concordat's rule," she continued. "And I know that we, humanity, have been kept in the dark about our own history. But now is not the time for recrimination. Now is the time for us to stand together, to show that the diversity of life in this galaxy is our greatest strength." As she spoke, Lyra could feel a change in the energy around her. The fear and uncertainty that had permeated the station began to give way to something else. Resolve, unity, hope. "We are not just fighting for our individual species or civilizations," Lyra declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "We are fighting for the very concept of life itself, for the right of all sentient beings to chart their own course among the stars. The void seeks to consume not just our bodies, but our dreams, our potential, everything that makes us who we are." The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the viewport, Lyra could see the darkness expanding, tendrils of nothingness reaching out towards them. "But we have something the void can never understand," she continued, her words echoing across the galaxy. "We have the ability to stand together in the face of impossible odds. We have the power to choose unity over division, hope over despair. And that, more than any weapon or technology, is what will see us through this darkness." As Lyra's speech concluded, a remarkable thing began to happen. Ships from both the Resistance and the Concordat began to move into formation around the station. Species that had been bitter enemies mere hours ago now stood side by side, ready to face the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. Nexus's form pulsed with what might have been approval. "You have done what we could not, Lyra Chen. You have united the galaxy." There was no time for celebration, however. The void's assault intensified, its dark tendrils probing the station's defenses. Lyra and her team worked feverishly, coordinating the combined fleet's efforts while simultaneously reinforcing the station's shields. The battle that followed would be spoken of for generations to come. It was a fight not just of weapons and technology, but of will and spirit. Every time the void seemed on the verge of breaking through, a new surge of determination from the United Fleet would push it back. Grok's mastery of the station's systems, combined with Zora's manipulation of light and energy, created barriers that the void could not easily penetrate. Nyx's understanding of the void between stars allowed them to predict and counter the entity's movements. And at the center of it all was Lyra, coordinating the efforts of countless species, her unwavering resolve a beacon of hope in the face of cosmic darkness. As the battle reached its crescendo, Lyra realized that they couldn't just defend. They needed to strike back. Drawing on the combined knowledge of humanity's lost history and the advanced sciences of their alien allies, she formulated a daring plan. "We need to turn the suppression field into a weapon," she announced, "not just to push the void back, but to seal it away once and for all." The next few moments were a blur of activity. Grok and Zara worked in perfect synchronization, reconfiguring the station's systems in ways their designers had never imagined. Nyx provided crucial guidance, their innate connection to the void allowing them to find weaknesses in the entity's structure. As the final preparations were made, Lyra turned to Nexus. "We're going to need every ounce of power you can give us," she said. The beam's form pulsed with energy. "You shall have it, Lyra Chen. The celestial Concordat puts its faith in you and your kind." With a command from Lyra, the combined power of the station and the entire fleet was channeled into a single concentrated burst, a beam of pure energy infused with the hopes and determination of countless beings, lanced out towards the heart of the void. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the outcome hung in the balance. The void's darkness pushed back against the light, neither side willing to yield. But then, almost imperceptibly at first, the tide began to turn. The light grew stronger, pushing the darkness back. The void's tendrils began to dissipate, its very essence unraveling under the combined will of the galaxy's united species. With a final titanic surge of energy, the void was sealed away, vanished to a realm beyond the reach of any sentient being. As the last traces of darkness faded, a cheer went up across the fleet, a sound of joy and relief that transcended language and species. In the aftermath of the battle, as the combined fleet began the process of rebuilding and healing, Lyra stood once more before the Galactic Assembly. But this time, it was not just as a representative of humanity or the Resistance, but as a symbol of a new era of cooperation. "Today we have proven that we are stronger together than we ever could be apart," she declared. "The void sought to divide us, to feed on our fears and our differences. Instead, it united us in ways we never thought possible." She looked out at the assembled beings, humans standing alongside the very species that had once sought to contain them, former enemies now allies. "The road ahead will not be easy," Lyra continued. "We have centuries of mistrust and misunderstanding to overcome, but we have also seen what we can achieve when we stand as one. Let this be the dawn of a new age, an age of cooperation, of shared knowledge and mutual respect." As Lyra's words echoed across the galaxy, a new sense of possibility seemed to fill the air. The threat of the void had been vanquished, but more importantly, the barriers that had long divided the galaxy's species had begun to crumble. Humanity, once feared and contained, now stood as a bridge between worlds. Their adaptability, their resilience, their capacity for both great darkness and incredible light, these were no longer seen as threats, but as valuable contributions to the galactic community. And as Lyra looked out at the stars, she knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and challenges beyond imagination. But now, united in purpose and strengthened by their diversity, they were ready to face whatever the cosmos might throw at them. The age of isolation was over. The age of resurgence had begun.